Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football Sunday afternoon. Former Notre Dame offensive lineman Rocco Spindler committing to Nebraska. This was, largely one of the last big names that we saw in the winter transfer portal window, and it sounded like Nebraska liked this kid a lot. I mean, there were some other Power Four programs that were interested in the services of Rocco Spindler. You saw some rumors late last night that Virginia was making a big push on the NIL front. I think we all thought the same thing when we saw that news, and that was if Nebraska wants him and Nebraska wants to shell the money for him, they're going to go out and get him. And Sunday afternoon, we get that answer. Rocco Spindler heading to Lincoln, Nebraska. My take on Rocco Spindler, look, you getting a guy that has started 23 football games during his career at Notre Dame, has played what I would say is a proving commodity on the inside of the offensive line. Those are hard to come by. It's hard to find bona fide starting caliber offensive linemen in the transfer portal, and Nebraska finds one with Rocco Spindler. And spending the last 4 years with that program at Notre Dame, you kind of feel like you're getting a developed, really polished up offensive lineman. The thing that probably excites me the most is the size. 6'5", 325. What can we do to make Dylan Rhule even more comfortable going into 2025? I think a lot of Nebraska fans probably in the same boat. That is, hey, we got to run the football a little bit better. We went out to the transfer portal, landed guys like Dan Key at the wide receiver, and we think the pieces are around Dylan to be successful in terms of the weapons he has on the outside. Now, can we give him a good run game? Can we allow Dylan to work off play action a little bit? Can we keep him clean in the pocket? I think that's what Rocco Spindler kind of helps this Nebraska program do. And from a roster construction standpoint, I really like what Nebraska's doing on the offensive line. You landed a guy like Elijah Pritchett. You land a guy like Rocco Spindler, but you also have a lot of young, up-and-coming offensive linemen that will be pushing Rocco and Elijah Pritchett for starting opportunities. Look, same thing we said about Elijah Pritchett, I'm going to say with Rocco Spindler. I would project Rocco Spindler to start for Nebraska in 2025. I do not think he's a plug-and-play guy immediately earning that starting spot, because I look at some of the other young cats on this Nebraska offensive line and say, I could see a couple of them pushing Rocco Spindler. In what kind of situation does that put Nebraska in on the offensive line? One, you have plenty of depth. I mean, you're going 8, 9, 10 guys on the offensive line that you might trust to play for Nebraska. That's not a thing that a lot of other programs can say. And then I think, secondly, look at it and say, this is going to help some of the young talent. Look, if you want to play over a guy like Rocco Spindler, you better be a pretty damn good football player, because that's what Rocco Spindler is. This one makes a lot of sense for a couple of different reasons for Nebraska. I think primarily in the run game. I mean, 6'5", 325. We are adding a big body that can move bodies off the line of scrimmage and get this Nebraska rushing attack back where I think Matt Rhule really wants it to be, and quite frankly expects it to be going into 2025. Want to get into a little bit more of Rocco Spindler. Take a look at how this Nebraska offensive line is going to shake out before we get into it. As always, the Nebraska fans, it's been fun covering the transfer portal commitments over the last month or so. The amount of support y'all continue to show to the boys continues to be amazing. Can't thank you guys enough. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Without further ado, let's get into Rocco Spindler. Again, I think it starts with this. He's a starting offensive lineman on a football team that just played for a national championship. Take that every single day of the week. Has started 23 games in his career. You take a look at the 2024 numbers, specifically in pass protection. You like what you get. 402 pass pro opportunities, 0 sacks, only 10 quarterback pressures. A guy that I think you're bringing in most importantly. Look, you kind of know Rocco Spindler going to be really, really solid in pass protection. At least that's what the numbers and the tape tells us. What can he do facilitating the run game for Nebraska? That's probably the biggest question, because, again, I look at it and say that the number one priority for Nebraska going into 2025, we got to get this run game off the ground. It needs to be better than it was in 2024. Now, I think schematically you get a lot better with Dana Holgorsen coming in. We still need the big bodies to move other bodies up front to get this run game going. Taking a look at The projected depth chart, again, this is loose, right? I think, at least in my opinion, I was really impressed with what Gunnar Gatula did as a redshirt freshman for Nebraska left tackle. I'm a massive fan of Justin Evans Jenkins on the inside. Sam Sledge, I think you feel comfortable at the center spot. This kind of allows you to be a little bit flexible, though, because I think Justin Evans can probably play center if you want to get Rocco Spindler and Henry Latoski on the field at the same time. Again, where I'm coming from here is Rocco Spindler's a guy that because you've seen it the last couple of years, you're going to have confidence trotting him out there on the inside of the offensive line. Can guys like Henry or can a guy like Preston Timo or Grant Bricks maybe push a guy like Rocco Spindler? We're going to find out over the next couple of months. But I think what you're doing here is creating, one, a lot of depth, and number two, a lot of competition. If you want your offensive line to be good, you got to be deep. You got to have competition. That's what Nebraska is trying to build with Matt Rhule. A lot of different ways that this Nebraska offensive line could look. The biggest takeaway for me is you can tell Matt Rhule is, for lack of terms, putting his fingerprints on this Nebraska roster. And what I mean by that is, hey, line of scrimmage is going to be a priority where you're going to get good football players and a lot of them on both sides of the line of scrimmage. And that's kind of coming to fruition on the offensive line. And you start looking at this Nebraska offense going into 2025. We know we got our guy in Dylan. We think we got a lot of difference makers on the outside around Dylan, Dane Keach, Corey Barney Hunter, even a guy like Cortez Mills coming in as a true freshman. Can the run game get it going? That's on Emmett Johnson and the running back room, and that's also on the offensive line. And I've been pretty vocal. Look, I think the offensive line in the run game was better than most people would probably think in 2024. I think it fell a little bit more on the running backs being difference makers with the football in their hands. We'll see if they can get that run game going. And if they do, I think this Nebraska offense can take a really big step. There's a lot of reason to believe this offense takes a good step because, one, you get Dylan going into year two. He's only going to get better as the experience kind of piles up for him. Significant upgrade at the wide receiver room, significant upgrade from the offensive play calling. And I think this offensive line could be pretty dang good with the development of the young talent as well as some of the additions that Nebraska made in the portal. Rocco Spindler, I don't think he's going to be an All-American here at Nebraska for his last year, but I do think he's going to be a really solid, dependable offensive lineman. And when you have the ability to go get those kind of guys, you never say no. Like, I'm a Michigan fan, and I kind of had the same approach for Michigan going after Rocco. Look, I ain't saying no to him. Would certainly be fired up if he joined this Michigan program coming to Nebraska, experienced veteran guy that has been a part of a really good team at Notre Dame that knows how to win football games, which I like as well. We'll close it out there. Another really good addition for this Nebraska program. Spring practice on the horizons. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. We'll talk to y'all later.